I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like the outrage towards Fighters Pass 2 didn't actually start until the halfway point. I remember when Min Min first came out, people were groaning about how there was someone with more range than arguably the longest range fighter, who's actually good, no offense Belmont, but with how gimmicky she looked and her underwhelming play rate, not many thought she would be a problem. Then shortly afterwards came Steve, whom everyone's first impression of at the time was, how the hell did an inside joke become the actual thing? That sort of mentality persisted for a while. They were seen more as a joke or a crossover achievement, not really meta-destroying threats. The discussion of Min Min, Steve, and Sephiroth's viability was not given a whole lot of attention because our perception of what was quote-unquote good in a character was still in a very rudimentary state. So when the Aegis, Pyra, and Mythra were brought to us, there was simultaneously a breath of fresh air in that we finally had a traditional swordie, but also a massive punch in the face that would signal all the doomsaying and backlash against Fighters Pass 2. Faster than any DLC fighter since Bayonetta, Pyra and Mythra's potential was immediately recognized in tournament play, becoming arguably the most popular character throughout late 2021 and early 2022 before the rest of the competition began learning the matchup. Even then, there's been absolutely no shortage of them, so it's about time we talk about why everyone plays Pyra and Mythra. Normally in my Why No / Everyone Plays series, I like to give a brief mention on the character's widespread popularity before touching on gameplay, especially on my other two channels, Vars 1 and 2. The reason I don't do so as often for Vars 3 is mostly because despite having debatably the most extensive roster of game franchises the world has ever seen, it's surprisingly likely for players to not have any idea of the fighter's game of origin, choosing instead to field them purely for gameplay-focused reasons. Not to say the players who pick up Steve have never played Minecraft, but that's not really the reason they're playing Steve, if that makes sense. Like, I don't main Cloud out of my love for Final Fantasy, not entirely anyway. It's mostly because he's a very comfortable and adaptable sword fighter with a good balance of power, speed, range, and mobility. That being said, character appeal plays a major role in any game, whether player versus player or player versus environment. Joker has a higher play rate than Hero because Persona 5 was a hot topic for several years, still is today, whereas Dragon Quest not so much. In contrast, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 were a bit smaller in recognition back then. Obviously right now they're big enough to be at the start or end of a Nintendo Direct, but I'd wager not many people actually knew about the Aegis before seeing them. However, they are attractive, and as they say, waifus are rated E for everyone. In all seriousness though, a good first impression definitely helps, but to keep that impression, you have to make up for it with game stats, and already they have two things going well for them. The first is their archetype. Even though players complain too much about there being too many sword fighters, they occupy a big market share for good reason. The class is generally considered safe and reliable. In a game where microspacing can make all the difference between dealing damage or taking it, having massive hitboxes works to your advantage. The second is their distinction from the rest of their peers. Fighters Pass 2's dominance is primarily a result of their unique mechanics, or gimmicks as we call them. Meanwhile, the Aegis are more or less normal. You don't have to get used to any weird gameplay quirk or unorthodox moveset to get the hang of them. Their kit and win conditions are digestible by anyone who's played a swordie before, which is basically everyone. A lot of their initial and continuing popularity has to do with having a relatively low learning curve, making it easy to garner decent results off of just bread and butter combos and setups in tandem with good fundamentals. Not saying the easier a character is, the more popular they are, but much of why someone like Sheik doesn't have a big following is because she's very difficult to play at an optimal level. Pyra and Mythra have arguably the highest return on investment out of any character in the game, besides maybe Roy. The premise is simple. Pyra and Mythra functionally possess the same moveset. Where they differ is in attributes, the former emphasizing power and range and the latter prioritizing speed and mobility. To play them well, you have to know when to switch between one and the other whenever necessary. Interestingly, characters with a gimmick surrounding transformation have had that work against them more often than not. You would think having access to more attacks or attribute changes would greatly boost their versatility, and it does, on paper. But in practice, they're usually balanced around being required to make use of every single possible attribute to perform at the highest level, for better or worse. Many top players have suggested Shulk has the potential to be the best character in the game, and Pokemon Trainer was indisputably a top tier, at least before the nerfs to Ivysaur. I plan to go over this in more detail in my Pokemon Trainer video whenever I decide to make it, but a recurring issue among Transformers is their inability to access all of their strengths at once, instead only being allowed to tap into half at a time. The Aegis differ in this greatly. Try to imagine them as a Venn diagram. While they each have their own strengths not present in the other, the middle part, their shared traits, is significantly larger than that found in Shulk, Pokemon Trainer, and Zelda and Sheik before they were split apart. Like I said before, Pyra and Mythra have the same normals. Their forward tilts are the same, up airs, down smash, etc. The The only difference is the variance in strength, speed, range, knockback, etc., which in fairness do change things up a lot, but the feel is still recognizable. Mythra forfeits a lot of kill power and some range while gaining tremendous speed and mobility. However, she doesn't give up too much range. She's still able to outspace most non-sword fighters, and even against other members of their class, her speed gives her the upper hand by striking them before they strike her. Meanwhile, Pyra trades speed and mobility for more range and extreme kill power, but the loss of speed isn't so great that it invalidates the increased range. If hypothetically we were to say each of Pokemon Trainer's Pokemon have 75% of a single character's total power, Pyra and Mythra each have 90%. They're closer to a full character than other Transformers because their base level is still very close to a normal fighter's, thus giving their strengths more of a chance to shine through. This is further amplified by them having a definitive purpose throughout a match. Take their fellow Xenoblade rep Shulk. It may seem like a no-brainer to use Buster Art at low percents to rack up damage before swapping to Smash Art to finish the job, but each Monado art comes with its own risks. The rule of thumb for Aegis is to open up with Mythra to rack up percent with their combos while gaining a situational advantage before swapping to Pyra to finish the kill. Obviously, there are times when Pyra is good at low percents and Mythra at high percents, but since they have contrasting strengths, that lets you tag between them as the game progresses, once again tying back to the whole thing of being digestible. It's true that there are two characters with their own set of moves you have to work around, but rather than being two halves that make up one character, it's two characters to the price of one. It's like if Mario could swap to Bowser and vice versa. Essentially, what separates the Aegis from Shulk or Pokemon Trainer is that the latter two's different stances have weaknesses that can only be mitigated by switching forms, but in doing so, they expose themselves to new weaknesses. Pyra and Mythra are incredibly polarizing characters, no one can deny that, but their attributes complement each other very well and leave them with few collective weaknesses outside of maybe an exploitable recovery, and that's a hard maybe, leading me to the biggest reason why everyone plays them. They're extremely overtuned. Empirically speaking, it's more evident in Mythra, but even her counterpart has this trait. Physics alone, Mythra is basically top 5. She has incredible mobility on the ground and in the air, not really lacking in any particular field besides maybe jump height. Now, if we go by pure frame data, sword fighters are balanced by having worse frame data than close range fighters to balance out their increased range. Mythra is the exception to this. She has fast enough frame data to box up close while also having a sword. Another weakness sword fighters have is their subpar combo game due to lower hit stun or higher knockback scaling, only allowing them to land 3 or 4 hits at low percents and just 1 or 2 at higher ones. Mythra is once again the exception to this, as many of her attacks have very low knockback scaling to allow her to combo all the way to 130% plus. Her excellent mobility also contributes to this, letting her chase after opponents even if she hits them very far away. In other words, Mythra literally breaks the rules that balance swordies, frame data, and combos. Granted, she still faces the same issue as Sheik or Base Joker where she hits you a dozen times and you only take 60%, but it comes extremely easily. When you play Mythra, almost everyone has to pay a heavy tax against you. Her speed and mobility is so good that she's almost guaranteed to land a first strike on you every time. A lot of people like to argue that for all of Mythra's speed, she still has to approach you, which makes her prone to being whiff punished or zoned out by projectiles, but that's if you can even keep distance from her. Yes, you can whiff punish Sheik, she has really short range. Mythra has a sword and she's very fast. How do you zone someone who can go from one side of town and city to the other in less than a second? You can't. Playing defensively against her isn't as effective as it looks either. A frequent defense for Mythra is that her attacks are unsafe on shield, and that's true. But 1, her generous range prevents her from being out of shield punished by a lot of fast options, and 2, Mythra's attacks are so fast that by the time most players realize they successfully blocked a down tilt or up tilt and try to respond with an attack, Mythra has either ran away or thrown out another attack to punish the shield drop. Even if you were to get the upper hand on her, keeping her in disadvantage is quite a challenge. She has no trouble landing on account of her fast fall speed and foresight, letting her escape untrue combos or juggles on top of having a frame 2 air dodge. Alternatively, she can just drift away from your attacks or even throw out an aerial of her own since they're so fast. This means the only real weakness Mythra has is kill power or lack thereof, which I think is complete horse manure by the way. Forward Smash King 2 frame has enough range to whiff punish the entire cast and is frame 14. She can tech chase you extremely easily with dash attack or down smash to set up edge guards. However, objectively speaking, she does struggle to kill. Although, switching to Pyra completely remedies this problem, and all it takes is a single press of down B. Unlike Shulk who takes a massive risk in activating Smash Art, swapping to Pyra is hardly any risk at all. If anything, it just pressures the opponent even more. Few things are more terrifying than being at like 130 plus and staring down Pyra. On to Pyra, she is collectively agreed upon as the weaker of the duo, not by any fault of her own. It's just that platform fighters value mobility and frame data so heavily and Pyra is quite slow, but not that much slower. For example, her neutral and forward air are 3 frames slower than Mythra while her up and down air are 4 frames slower. Here's the thing, Pyra has more range, considerably more range. When spaced correctly, that 3 to 4 frame deficit only turns out to be 1 to 2. Not that big of a difference. Sacrificing 1 or 2 frames for vastly higher kill power is a trade-off no one would decline. Pyra certainly does compromise on speed and combo potential, but she still has kill setups, meaning she doesn't have to resort to YOLO stray hits to close out stocks and can safely fish for easy ways to send you to the Shadow Realm. Down tilt and up air is an easy one. There's also down air into literally everything else in her kit. She has some of the easiest ledge trapping and edge guarding out of any character too, and when you factor in how quickly you can swap between the two, Mythra can effortlessly throw her opponent off stage, taking care of the hard part. Then she switches to Pyra and finishes you off while your escape options are smothered out. Say you were in a contest of stray hits, Pyra also benefits from Roy privilege, where anything that isn't a combo tool has enough knockback scaling to kill you. Gentleman jab, forward tilt, up tilt, dash attack, neutral air, forward air, back air, up air, neutral B, side B, up yet a shield, even down throw. Just about all of Pyra's attacks kill. Better yet, she has a frame 3 gentleman jab that kills. Her overwhelming range makes her one of the deadliest opponents in last stock lasted scenarios in that you have to somehow find a way to get through her range to score a hit, even though she has the most generous range out of any swordy in the game. More so than Shulk in my opinion. It would be one thing if her ground game was bad, but no, her ground game is amazing and her air game even more so. This means the only real weakness Pyra has is her mobility, or lack thereof. She can definitely struggle against rushdown characters in neutral and disadvantage. The only scenario where she isn't is when said rushdown is damaged enough to where one clean hit will wipe them out. Although switching to Mythra completely remedies this problem, and all it takes is a single press of down B. Pyra and Mythra are what happens when you take a character with clear strengths and weaknesses and make it so you can give up 50% of your strength to eliminate 90% of your weakness, on demand. Faster combo heavy characters like Sheik, Bayonetta, or Mario are kept in check by not having very many kill options or just lower base kill power overall, requiring them to not only bring their opponents to a very high percent but also have to land the right attack on them at the right place on stage. Heavy hitters like Bowser and Kazuya are kept in check by their underwhelming frame data or difficulty in landing a clean shot due to being slow or easy to box out. Even characters who temporarily gain increased skill pressure or mobility have to pay a heavy cost or can't access it as freely as they would like. For Shulk, to gain increased mobility, he has to give up damage, kill power, or make himself vulnerable to getting one-shot. Joker does have Arsene, but it's involuntary. It's not like he can save it up for when he needs it the most. Mythra lacks kill power, but she can instantly fix that by swapping to Pyra. Pyra lacks mobility, but she can instantly fix that by swapping to Mythra. That sense of agency not only lends credence to their consistency and competitive, but also minimizes player frustration. Frustration is the #1 reason players lose interest in something. The biggest turnoff in any game is lack of agency, being unable to change or achieve something. People became frustrated with Inkling's awkward kill setups or Sheik's lack of kill power, realizing no amount of skill or effort will change the fact that those characters simply don't have the same KO potential as someone like Terry. Actually, talking about Inkling is very appropriate seeing as Cosmos dropped them in exchange for Aegis. I don't blame him, nor anyone else who picks Aegis. Why make $20 an hour when you can make 40? It feels like such an easy decision to make with how generous and forgiving the Aegis are, and that's kind of disheartening. The idea of being a transformer is to be a jack of all trades, to have an answer for many situations. Pokemon Trainer prides himself on having a very multi-dimensional team. Squirtle for speed, Ivysaur for range and neutral, and Charizard for power. Shulk's various Monado arts are to help him out no matter the circumstance, but they both suffer from not being able to tap into all of their strengths at once, only 1 or 2 at most. Pyra and Mythra can tap into virtually 90% of the strengths at a time, and the remaining 10% can be made up for through execution and good play. It's a lot harder to make up for 25% though. This makes me believe that transforming characters in Smash will only be popular or good if they're massively overtuned, but if they're massively overtuned, that makes them inherently unfair to go up against, hence why so many people dislike Aegis. They're too rewarding for how simple they are to pick up. Why bother playing one character when you can play 2 characters in one who are individually as strong as that one character? It's a no-brainer. Reminds me a lot of Smash 4 Cloud, not really known for any crazy gimmicks or cheesy tech, just a conventionally strong character. Arguably too strong. Then again, this might be a hot take, but I actually think that's what separates them from the likes of Steve, Kazuya, or Min. To beat Pyra and Mythra, you just have to better player them. Fighting them is more straightforward than fighting Steve, for instance, and I'd honestly rather fight Aegis over Ice Climbers or Snake. But I played Cloud, I enjoy straightforward matchups. Anyways, that's gonna be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have, it would be awesome if you could leave a like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter at Vars, joining my Discord server, and check out my other Why Everyone Plays videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.